welcome to KoshienCast, the podcast which, like the Blue Wizard, jumped the shark weeks ago. My name is Matt, and joining me today is a very special guest, Matt.
I am impressed you managed to make a joke from Aoyama-kun funny.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, you know, I had to dig deep, but there it is. So this is the 6th week of the summer season. We'll be covering every sports anime that aired between August 6th and August 12th. Matt, do we have anything to discuss up front, or do you want to just jump into the question of the week?
I don't think we have anything going on, so I'm just going to ask you a question.
Tell me what you want to know.
Okay, so this question is from Matt K. of Indiana.
Just shut up, it's from you.
Yeah, I know it is, okay? Okay, so Matt, I'm wondering, have any of the sports anime that we have watched made you interested in further researching a sport? And now, obviously, you can't say baseball because you're already super into baseball.
Right. Well, so the first thing that comes to mind is it's not since we watched it, but when I watched the first 2 series of Yawapeida,
Okay.
I actually started cycling more then, and I do think it had a direct effect. And I mean, this is gonna sound dumb, but when I would exercise in the morning back then, and this was like probably in 2014, 2015.
Right.
I would go to my old gym when I lived in Washington had like spin class, and I would go to spin class and I would like think about Onada pushing it to the limit, and I would be like, yeah, I would, start thinking about Hime, and yeah, it was like, I don't know, it was kind of fun.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm really happy you told me that.
Yeah, I don't think I ever told you that before. What about you, Matt? Has your interest been piqued?
I'm gonna admit, encouragement of climb has really got me wanting to go to Japan again and just see mountains.
Yeah.
I think that would be the biggest effect that any of them have had on me.
Cool.
Yeah.
The
cool.
end. And this is the end of my sentence. Period. Well, with that smooth transition, do you want to smoothly transition into Welcome to the Ballroom?
Yeah, sure thing, buddy. Cool. So we are covering episode 6. Yeah, episode. Okay, I'm just going to keep going.
Okay.
Alright, so we are covering episode 6 this week. It is about Tadara and Mako challenging Gaju to the Tenpei Cup, an enthusiast cup that's coming up soon. They are going to practice the quick step, thanks to Sengoku, who says it's the key to the to winning that entire cup, because it's a very flashy maneuver. Tadara is struggling to not bump into people on the dance floor upon immediately learning how to use it. He struggles a lot with that. Later on that evening, Mako and him have a phone call where Mako basically tells him, he needs to look out better for himself because, he's spending all this time trying to look out for other people and not, take care of himself, essentially. Mm-hmm. And then the episode ends with the two of with Tadara doing better.
Yeah. That's what he does. He gets better, right?
Yeah, basically. So, I think I was a bit more positive on this episode than you were.
Tell me why, because we can start high and then I can go low.
Okay. Okay, fair enough. I don't know. The series is really selling Tadara and Mako to me as a couple.
Yeah.
I actually really hate Gaju. I think the series is actually doing I don't think it's unintentional for them to basically be Gaju's this giant jerk who needs to be kind of brought down a little bit. It's not a perfect episode, but I think what really sold me on this episode was the phone call between Tadara and Mako. Just because I think it was the first time I felt like I've actually understood Tadara as a character. there are some nice little character building moments between the two of them. Like, I love he kind of mentions, it's like, my parents are divorced. It's like, that would have been a great character detail to know before.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it reminds me a lot of that episode of All Out where we finally learn about Gion and his history. And, there's always this sort of, like, stuff in the background that was going on. But, it's like it was kind of played off as a joke. And, this was the first time I ever really, like, felt Tadara's plight. And, that kind of went a long way for me. My concern is that they're still going to be pushing Tadara and Shizuku together, which I really don't like. Just because I think Mako is clearly a far more supportive person. She clearly is doing a lot for Tadara. They clearly work very well together, and I don't like the idea that the series wants to push just the main male and the main female together. I wish we were kind of getting more of Shizuku's, kind of her opinion in all of this.
Yeah, and so that's, I think, what my frustration comes from. I do think that this episode was definitely starting to get things in a better direction than it had been going early. I think we're getting a lot more of an education about how the competitions work.
Right.
We're learning more about how each dance is distinct from others instead of just getting thrown into it.
Right.
And yeah, we feel like they have to work towards something, and they're going by incremental steps. Haha. Because, they're starting at this, basically it's an amateur event. No one's going to get any credit for it, but that's, Tadara sort of has to start with that at that level just to get used to the norms. So right. I do like those things, but like you mentioned, I don't totally get what they're trying to do with Shizuku right now. Because she's just sort of present, and she hasn't been given a voice for a while. I think it was in episode 5 that she was like, "Oh, I'm done with Hyodo because he doesn't take care of himself." And you're kind of like,
right,
okay, and and you feel that way because, and you're gonna dance with Gaju because, but very much she's just sort of this passive participant, and whether it's Hyodo or it's Gaju or even if it's Tadara, it seems like a lot of the time Shizuku is treated as this sort of like silent, sexy muse who they just sort of like project their desires onto.
A little bit. Yeah. I kind of thought that was a bit of the point that they were going for with Gaju a little bit, because that was Gaju's whole character. They had that flashback for him. We kind of left that out. Of the summary. Can
I just say that real quick?
Yeah, sure.
They do a flashback so that you can learn where Gaju came from. It shows him when he's like 10 years old, and he goes to some dance event with his sister, and he sees 9-year-old Shizuku there, and he's like, "Oh wow, that girl's so pretty, someday she'll be my partner." And then flashback to present. That's his whole backstory. Right. Is like, one time, 6 years ago, I thought Shizuku was hot. And she is, that's yeah, go ahead.
I think that is the point of Gaju's character. I don't think that the series is necessarily, trying to espouse what he's doing here. Because everything about his character has made him come off as very creepy. There's that one moment where where the camera just sort of lingers on, he just, these are two people who just met, and, he just kind of, while they're in conversation, he places his hands on Shizuku's shoulders, and kind of in this sort of weird massage position. These are acting like he's this familiar with this girl. And it's clear that this, because there are some things he was mentioning, talking about he was telling Tadara, it's you're the lead, so you're everything's going to depend on you, Tadara. Or I think he was talking to Mako about that, because, Mako was kind of off to the side there as well. And he's like, "Are you okay with this challenge that he's giving us here?" Because it's this is all going to depend on him because he's the lead. And it's clear that he doesn't have a respect for who the partner is. He clearly feels as if though, the partner is just there for, basically there for the lead. So
exactly, yeah. The thing he loves about Shizuku is that she's able to keep up with him.
Right, but that's all that he appreciates about her.
And he thinks she's hot.
Right, no, exactly. But I think that's the point that they are trying to drive home with Gaju, and that's what I like.
Yeah. It's just, I hopefully will get some other narratives, but what bothered me was that Mako kind of echoed the narrative of, well, I'm your partner, so it's my job to follow you, so I'll do whatever you do, Tadara. I'm just here to support you. Sort of like, maybe it's trying to say, like, oh, she's imbibed the language from Gaju, but no one is saying, oh, actually both partners are equally valuable. Like, I just want something where it's not all about the dance is there to, like, fulfill Tadara's dream and that everyone else is secondary, because that's the way it comes across. And it even comes across at the end where when Sengoku is watching Mako and Tadara dance, he lists off all the great things that Tadara is doing, and he's like, he's got all the skills he needs now, and also there's some girl with him or whatever, like totally ignoring the fact that she's also what makes them an effective couple.
Right,
he's not out there by himself anyway.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't really, at this point, though, I've been so disappointed by Sengoku's character generally that I can't expect him to be, like, the moral compass of the show.
Right, but he kind of feels like he should be a little bit.
Exactly, he's still a voice of authority.
Right, it would be one thing if the series did more to undermine him. I mentioned that last week. That was one thing I liked about Episode 5, was that, Tamaki actually, like, undermined him somewhat. Like, she was the one who kind of, like, punished him for being like, why are you throwing all this on Tadara? This was your fault.
Yeah.
So I want more moments like that, but you're right, in this episode we didn't get enough of that because, he needs to, like, he either needs to be the moral voice, or the series needs to do more to show that he is not in the right here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But that being said, I still enjoyed this episode a lot more because I don't know. This is actually a problem I have as well, is that I'm afraid that, because I don't like that they are doing this challenge because, like, Mako wants to get back together with Gaju as her partner. Mm-hmm. Or as his partner, rather.
Yeah, I have a feeling even if they win, they'll be like, actually, we've unlocked a whole new level. I don't want to leave, whatever. That'll be another thing for them to...
I mean, so in Welcome to the Ballroom, like, the whole dancing partner thing, this is clearly meant to be, like, a relationship allegory, essentially. And, it's kind of one of those things where, looking at it like that, it's clear that Mako is a much more supportive person. Like, she's clearly a much better, like, person for Tadara than Shizuku is, mainly just because Shizuku is basically just the hot girl. Like, I'm sorry to say it like that, but I mean...
Well, yeah, they're not giving her anything else to work with.
Right. There are moments where they kind of show, like, there's this one great moment with the camera work, where while Kyoto's talking about, it's like, well, Sengoku's giving them, like, Sengoku is giving them, like, private lessons. That's strange. And, like, the camera actually is focused on her face. It's like an extreme close-up on her face, and you just see her, like, looking away, just completely, like, almost dead-eyed to the world. Like, it feels like everybody is sort of denying her the chance to grieve, almost, because, she did have this big breakup with her partner, and everybody is just kind of going out of their way to, like,
ignore it.
Like, yeah, kind of ignore it. So, I don't know. I feel like that the series because of those close-ups, it does feel like to me that the series does understand this a little bit more than what it's letting on, but I don't know. I'm interested. I'm actually interested to see what's going on in Welcome to the Ballroom, which is more than I've been able to say for a while.
Yeah, that's a nice change. I'm also interested in Dive, so I'm gonna talk about it.
Go for it.
Did you hear that pause? That was me preventing myself from saying I'm gonna dive right in, because I want to do that every freaking time, but I know that I cannot.
You're making a real splash into punnery there, Matt.
Oh, that was almost okay. All right.
It was a 6. It was a 6 out of 10.
Well, speaking of 6, this is Dive episode 6, and it starts out with Tomo confronting his brother, who is on a secret PlayStation date with Tomo's girlfriend. Turns out that his brother actually likes Miyu. Miyu may or may not like Tomo's brother. Ultimately, Tomo gets really frustrated by the fact that because he's been so focused on diving, his girlfriend doesn't really want to spend time with him anymore. He skips practice for 2 weeks because he's depressed and he just wants to be by himself. Ultimately, he gets confronted by Coach Asaki, who says that there's a lot of things you have to give up to be great at diving, but that doesn't mean it wasn't worth it. And she talks a little bit about why she came to MDC in the first place and exactly what Tomo's capable of. He ends up going to the meet anyway, and this is a meet to determine who's going to go to Beijing for the training camp. He dives effectively. He ultimately gets 4th place and pulls off a lot of what he'd been training to do. Yoichi gets 1st, and Okitsu has a focus of the plot where he decides that he's going to make big splashes and dive his way even if he loses points for it.
Right. So this episode was kind of the inverse for us. You were really excited about it, and I was a bit more cool on it.
All right, let's start low and then we'll go high.
You can go first sometimes, Matt. It's fine.
Nah, I'm over it.
Okay, so I kind of felt like we got through Tomo's grieving process a little bit too fast.
Just with the time skip?
Yeah, just with the time skip. Like, it sounds weird. I would have liked to have seen more of Tomo's, like, frustrations. Because it kind of feels like we just sort of start this episode and it's like, oh, Tomo's been gone for 2 weeks. Better go talk to him now.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I don't know, like, I get that he's just a kid who's, like, frustrated because, like, oh, my girlfriend left me. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, I know at the time it seems pretty bad, but, it's like, it's kind of one of those things that you look back on when you're adult and you just sort of laugh about it.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. I would have liked to have just seen more of his problems because, I don't know, I didn't really feel like... I wanted Asaki's speech to land a little bit harder. I don't know.
I don't know about that. I mean, I thought that she pretty much cut to the quick when she confronted him in his room and said, you're not actually depressed because you liked her. If you had liked her, then you would have spent more time with her in the first place. You're just depressed because, like, something disappeared and you feel like you don't have control over it. You're not really depressed about the person.
Right. No. I get that. I don't know. I kind of felt like what I liked about that part actually was the fact that Tomo confronted her about it. So it's like, you don't know what it's like. And she's like, yeah, you're right. Like, I don't, but, this is something you've been practicing for, so go for it.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't know. I did feel like that was a bit too reductive to just say something like, oh, if you really would have wanted to do it, you would have done it anyway. Because, I don't know. It's kind of one of those things where it's like... That feels like an almost teenage view of the world. A little bit.
I don't know. I mean, he is a teenager for what it's
right.
worth. And I think it may not be descriptive of why adults break up, but I think a lot of times it's descriptive of why younger people break up. Just for me personally, I think, like, I didn't date a lot growing up, but when I did, usually it would end because I actually, like, I would tell myself that I wanted a relationship to succeed, but really I just didn't want to get dumped. It wasn't that I liked the person that much, because if I had, I probably would have put more into it. I just didn't want to be the kind of person who got dumped, and I think that's what he's confronting.
I think that's what I would have liked a little bit more in this episode, actually, is to see more of... I think that's kind of why it didn't really land so well, because I really needed to see more examples of why Tomo... I forgot his name. Oh my god, I'm so sorry.
Oh, I'm good. I don't have to edit it.
Fair enough. Tomo would have, like, felt like this. Like, I don't know. Like, it feels like I was missing something in there. Like, I wanted to see more of him just sort of needlessly longing for Miu, but not I don't know what I really wanted out of that, I guess. Like,
yeah, I understand where you're coming from. It does feel a little bit quick for him to go from being holed up in his room to saying, "Oh, you're right. I guess I think that my brother is who I would have been if I'd made different choices."
Right. I didn't like that line either, because he literally just says that line.
Yeah.
One thing I did like about that, though, is when Hiroya states, he's like, "Did you even notice that she cut her hair?" I really liked that moment, because I felt like he was talking to me, because, like, did she cut her hair?
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like we've seen her so little that it's like, man, I didn't even realize that was the case, that she had actually cut her hair.
And it is kind of good for the viewer, because, we've seen her just as much as Tomo has. So
right.
we are also like, oh, wait, what? So it's kind of fun that it creates the sense that, oh, there's this whole world happening that the show isn't letting you see.
Right. And that's the part I like about this. That was kind of the part I really liked about this episode. And again, I liked the fact that Tomo is going through this issue, is, kind of going through all this. I would have preferred it if this episode sort of ended on Asaki's speech, I guess, and then moved on to the big dive competition. I don't know.
Speaking of which, did you think there was anything particularly interesting in the competition itself?
There was one thing that stuck out to me that I was a little bit confused about, actually. So Okitsu does, like, after Okitsu's first dive...
Yeah.
Asaki comes up to him and is like, "Hey, like, why aren't you doing your normal, like, dives? I want you to do those. It's like, I want you to try and focus on," it's like, I didn't tell you to, cut that out. And I like that, it's like, it's showing, it's like, look, I got you for a reason. I had you join this team for a reason. I could have gotten anybody to do what you were doing, up there just now. But there was one line that was really weird, which was, his coach, or Akitsu's coach, was like, "Yeah, but his back," and he was like, "No, you can't tell her about it." It's like, it was something like, he was really mad that he was telling her about this, and I was just wondering, it's like, did we know that he was having back issues?
I don't know. Yeah, that was a confusing moment. And I'm not, like, sure whether it's saying, oh, you should go all out even if it hurts. Like, I don't know what narrative they're trying to go for there. But yeah, I didn't think they'd established anything like that.
Yeah, it's like, I kind of felt like I had missed something there.
Yeah.
I don't know. It didn't really... Like, that part didn't land for me. I thought... But I like the fact that, she has that talk with him. It's like, you need to be doing your big splashy dives, even though... they're not going to score you a lot of points, because, it's riling the audience up, and, that is what part of this is about.
Mm-hmm.
And, Kitsu does learn something about it. It's actually kind of the first time I've actually liked a Kitsu. It was just that whole comment about his back that was weird to me.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, for me, there wasn't a whole lot of depth to the second half of the episode.
Right.
I just enjoyed seeing Tomo succeed, and I also enjoyed the fact that he wasn't suddenly the best. But that he had improved visibly.
Right.
That was, I don't know. For me, that was kind of like an action sequence where there's not a lot to it, but it's fun to watch.
And, I'm going to give it a little credit here as well. I'm glad that we didn't spend the entire episode on this, or we didn't have to spend an entire episode on this, because even though the series is called Dive, and even though, we do cover sports anime here, the sport itself is actually, watching the sport itself is actually not the interesting part of the series. So I'm glad that we don't have to have very elongated diving sequences.
Well, yeah, they managed
because I feel like I understand enough of it.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's like, I understand enough of the sport to understand why it matters to the characters.
I also appreciate that generally when they do show the dives on screen, they do them at full speed rather than doing all of them in slow-mo while there's an internal monologue about analyzing every element of it. Because it's a lot cooler when you see it at full speed.
Right, yeah, exactly. It's like they managed to get some more out of the animation there. Like you can actually get a sense of like what they're doing, and it does look nice. Mm-hmm. But speaking of looking nice,
not every. It doesn't always have to be the last word you say has to segue perfectly into the next section.
Look, can you just talk about Fastest Finger already?
I can. So Fastest Finger, episode 6. This is 3 stories that are all centered on Akihabara. So it turns out that Fukami has taken a job as, you guessed it, a maid cafe waitress. In order to get money for buzzers. Separately, the Sasajima siblings are shopping for parts for buzzers, because this is the only possession anyone wants. And Koshiyama and Inoue went to an arcade, and they do a quiz arcade machine. They end up getting paired on doing a quiz game against someone else in the arcade. Turns out it's the only other person in the universe, Mikuria. And they have a quiz face-to-face, and they aren't able to finish their match because a couple of bullies kick them off the arcade, but then a random girl in cosplay chases off the bullies with her fighting game prowess, and everyone leaves to go to visit Fukami's maid cafe while Koshiyama gets super hyped about having a rival in Mikuria, and so he goes home to study.
Right. So, I was a lot more positive on this episode. However, you did bring up an element there that might be a little concerning.
So I think we should start with the positive.
Okay. So, what I liked about this episode was, I like that it felt a bit like world building, essentially, like slice of life world building, like here. Like I like the fact that they mention that a lot of people who are into Quiz Bowl actually go here to play this game because like it's cheaper than having to go with buzzers, and it's still roughly a lot of the same rules there anyway. Mm-hmm. I like that too because it's like you don't have to be like into nerd culture or be a giant otaku in order to like be into Quiz Bowl, but they do kind of go hand in hand. Like you get kind of the nerdy, like the book smart people who also get into anime and stuff like that, and so I did kind of like the connection there. There was one thing that I thought was also kind of interesting that I just want to bring up as a side note here. I thought it was interesting that they actually mentioned Sega by name because one of the questions was name the Sega
Dreamcast.
Yeah, the Sega Dreamcast. What's interesting to me about that, Sega actually owns most of the. I don't know if it's most, but they own quite a few arcades around Akihabara, and they are actually like the #1 producer of like arcade machines around the world. So I thought that I think there might be something going on there where Fastest Finger is actually being sponsored by Sega, but I liked that as well because it does kind of help. Like, it's such a minor detail to even think about. Like, it's not even something that most people would even think about, but this is probably a Sega arcade machine, so that's why they were able to get away with saying Dreamcast. Yeah. I like the character building a little bit between Koshiyama and Inoue as well, because there's this when they sit down to play at the quiz game, Inoue's like, hey man, look, like this is this quiz game, like that's like Quiz Bowl, and he's talking about like the cute anime characters on screen, and Koshiyama's whole reaction is just like, oh, this will be great for my studies, like, oh my goodness, more Quiz Bowl stuff. And I kind of just loved Inoue's reaction there because he kind of has this sort of like sullen like, are you like ever off, dude? Like, can we just like hang out, man? Like bros? I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I also like seeing them, focusing on, balancing each other's strengths. I like that at no point does it seem like they're competing with each other. And it did a surprisingly effective job of teaching 3 new formats of Quiz Bowl without it seeming like, an exposition dump.
Right. Like, it felt very natural to the plot. Like, these are all forms that they could possibly encounter during the Quiz Bowl match.
And they're not too complicated.
Right, but the series doesn't have to make an aside and be like, okay, so that's what this form of Quiz Bowl. Like, this is this type of question in Quiz Bowl, or this type of round in Quiz Bowl. Like, no, it's very natural because, it's just spontaneous. It's just part of the game. It is a little silly that it was Mikiura again who was around.
Yeah, it's always Mikiura.
I did get a bit of a kick out of the fact that he is actually probably a secret otaku.
Yeah, exactly, and he spent the episode trying to deny it. That was fun.
And I kind of like the fact that he's this sort of character because again he has this very sort of cocky overbearing personality, but when it comes right down to us, he's just a giant nerd like all the rest of them are.
Yeah.
And I find that kind of endearing to his character. But Matt, if you would...
Yeah. So speaking of otaku in this episode of Fastest Finger, there is another character who shows up, goes unnamed, but there is a cosplay girl who is watching them play the quiz arcade game. She ends up confronting the bullies who kick them off. She tells them that if they can beat her in any game, then she'll give them whatever they want. And they do go to a fighting game, and of course she beats them, and they run off crying or whatever. Right. And then she confronts the Quiz Bowl kids and kind of starts making fun of them for being nerds and saying like, "Oh, you're just coming here to do this Quiz Bowl game so you can study. Like, are you serious?" And Koshiyama shoots back like, what's wrong with, working your hardest at something you love, yada yada. And so she looks at him and she kind of has this creepy expression, and she remembers that his name is Koshiyama. What bothered me about it was that, I don't know, and I'm not convinced that this is true, but between her manner of speaking and some of the facial expressions and some of the, I guess, body language and the way she was so direct and confronting people, I have a feeling that they're setting up this character to be revealed as a cross-dresser.
Right.
And so that it's a guy who likes dressing up as cute anime girls, but is also, like, a little bit evil and kind of suddenly possessive of Koshiyama and gonna like follow Koshiyama around, and they're gonna have all of these wacky reactions about how weird and gross it is that this person is cross-dressing. Again, I don't know that this is gonna happen. There's plenty of people who watched the episode, including you, who didn't actually pick up on this possibility. So right now it's a theory, it's definitely not a fact, but it seems like the signs are pointing in that direction.
So I'm gonna have a count. I was thinking of this as you were saying it, right? There is always the possibility, if they turn out to be a cross-dresser, there is always the possibility that it doesn't go like the lowbrow, kind of offensive gay panic type of humor.
Yeah.
Because what did strike this character, this mystery character, was that Koshiyama was sort of, if they are in fact a cross-dresser, he was sort of defending her style of life in a way, because he was basically like, well, what's wrong with, being really into something?
Yeah.
And that seems to be what did strike a chord with this character. So there is always the chance that this could actually be rather tasteful. It's just knowing Japan sometimes, and knowing a lot of anime, it's not generally.
Yeah, I agree. And just, there was something about the sort of, creepy grin on this character's face as they left and just muttering about Koshiyama that, it didn't seem like this was going to go in a very positive direction anytime soon.
Right.
But again, hopefully I'm wrong.
Yeah, hopefully we're just overanalyzing this.
Yeah, it's happened before. See Tiger Mask for frickin' 9 months.
Right, and it's just I don't want to dislike this series because it's going to end up hurting somebody.
Yeah, exactly. it's been a series that has surprised us with being more realistic and being more fun than it should be by its premise and by its design. And if it goes this way, it could really undermine a lot of that by just being lowbrow and kind of lowest common denominator for no reason. Just,
making fun of cross-dressers, we don't want that.
Yeah. So, I mean, but again, this show hasn't disappointed me yet. So, until I get, concrete reason to believe that it's up to something untoward, I'm still going to give it the benefit of the doubt. But we'll see. Something else we saw was, unfortunately, Clean Freak Aoyama-kun.
Okay, so this episode, episode 6, of course, had nothing to do with soccer again. It covered the...
or Aoyama.
Or really, just let me continue here.
Sorry.
So this is about a secret manga author from their class, Ozaki, who apparently is a published, he's very successful manga artist who actually has an anime deal going on for his manga, I Want to Save the World. Anyway, the entire series, he comes up with this villain that's based off of Aoyama, and this character gets immensely popular despite everything he tries to do. Eventually, he does something so terrible, which is make all the girls in the world fall in love with this evil character, the Blue Wizard, as it's called. That it's going to that it plummets the popularity, and then everything he does to try and rekindle the popularity of the character gets worse and worse until he finally gets super petty and draws him as the villain again, and then everything is forgiven. Everybody loves this Blue Wizard character again. The end. So why don't we start positive, Matt?
Yeah, fair enough. So it's a little uncomfortable for me to admit. Maybe my favorite thing about the episode was that it had nothing to do with Aoyama. Because he doesn't add anything to any character, and he's just sort of there. I thought the premise was kind of funny of this... I also like the fact that Ozaki is apparently the only person in this universe who doesn't worship Aoyama. Because he sees all the same things everyone else sees, and he's like, what is up with this dude? Why is everyone obsessed with him? What's he doing to these people? Is he playing mind games? I don't get it. And so he takes that out and he creates this character based on what he thinks Aoyama is doing, and of course all the same people who love Aoyama love this character anyway, and he still can't figure it out. Why do they love this character? So kind of the back and forth of him trying to create this character who would be despicable but accidentally having people love it. I mean, it wasn't the most original idea in the world, but I thought it was kind of fun to watch. I mean, so here's the be all end all for me, is that I have not yet described an episode of Aoyama as fun to watch. I've never said, "Oh yeah, no, that was kind of fun." I've never said that about any of the first 5 episodes, and I did kind of feel that way at the end. I didn't feel like it lasted an hour and a half when it was 20 minutes, which is usually how I feel. And so I think for that alone, this is the best Clean Freak Aoyama-kun episode of all time.
Okay, so I'm going to give this episode credit for one thing. I was really terrified that this episode was going to end with Ozaki realizing why everybody loves Aoyama, basically. And that was my major concern. Because, the setup was there. Because, it's like, oh, he interprets, how everybody does things for Aoyama. It's like, oh, he interprets that as him being, this villainous character. But no, Aoyama's just this really deep, good guy. He's just this really deep, caring guy. Everybody understands and everybody loves him. And I was getting ready to groan about it. The series does actually pull away from doing it. Because what Ozaki figures out is that it's his pettiness towards Aoyama that actually does drive this manga. And that was, at the very least, that was a joke. It actually felt like a punchline to me, which is not something I think I have been able to say about much else in this series. It actually ended on a unique punchline. That's at least alright. I don't know. I was watching this episode, and I was thinking to myself, yeah, Aoyama really is a jerk.
Yeah.
Kind of. Like, you know, yeah, everybody does all this stuff for him. You know, everybody is, like, trying to clean up for him. Everybody, like, praises and loves this guy for no reason. And, yeah, and he doesn't even acknowledge them. He doesn't praise them for it. He just sort of goes off on his own world. It's like, yeah, whatever. This is, you know, it's like, yeah, I'm obsessive compulsive. What? Like, yeah, everybody does things for me. Whatever. And yeah, I'm kind of with Ozaki on this. He's kind of a huge villain. Like, he's kind of a jerk.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say he's a jerk. I'd just say, like, the appeal is disproportionate to what he gives anyone else, you know?
Right. Yeah, kind of. And I don't know if the series gets any credit for calling itself out.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It doesn't really work for me, I guess.
Yeah, like, so the other thing that I didn't learn until after I'd watched the episode, I was kind of like, you know, it was just it was a fine episode, but it was so strange because it didn't involve Aoyama hardly at all, and I was just like, what do people think about this? So I actually read the weekly episode review from Lauren Orsini, who writes for Anime News Network, and she pointed out something that I had missed because I hadn't seen this series, was that it was strikingly similar to another recent comedy series called Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun.
Okay.
Which is about, get this, a high school student who's secretly a famous manga author who bases his manga on the people in his school.
Okay.
And his name is Nozaki.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so what she's saying is like, okay, what the author was going for was a parody of this other work using his own characters, but it was just kind of a ripoff, and it didn't actually add anything. It just felt like it was unoriginal and kind of a throwaway.
Yeah, that's kind of what I like, because there was, like, we didn't really gain anything, I guess, outside of the insight that, yeah, Aoyama is kind of unaware and doesn't realize, or doesn't even, like, acknowledge that people care about him.
We didn't gain anything. But that's like, I'm beyond gaining something from this show. At this point, It's proven that it's going to be about a different character every week, and their mild to significant interaction with Aoyama that changes their life in some way. And that's it. That's all it's ever going to be.
Right.
It's completely episodic.
I guess because it's like, because it's like, for you, this was like the best episode today. I really hated this episode. And I think it was just, for me, it was just because of how unfunny the joke was about this manga that he was writing, I guess. Like, it just felt like such a surface level interpretation of shonen manga. Like, because it's like, what is the name of the series? I'm going to save the world.
Yeah.
Like, that's not, like, I get that the joke here is that, like, he's sort of like, yeah, this is what shonen manga is. But it's like, I don't really feel like you got a decent handle on the gag there. It just kind of feels like you were going with the most base, surface level interpretation of what a shonen manga is. Which to me is really a problem because the series is written in Shonen Jump.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you don't even seem to, like, I don't know, it didn't really do any, like, and what are the name of the characters? The Blue Wizard. Like,
well, that was because it was a pun on Aoyama.
I guess that's fair, because I think Awa is actually, like, blue in Japanese.
Yeah.
But, I guess, but I don't know, it felt like a very weak parody of shonen manga, and the fact that it just kept going was just so frustrating. Then I didn't really get why people were I think because of that, it didn't really make sense to me why everybody was just freaking out about this, like, manga that he was writing, because it was just such a rote boring manga from what it sounded
Matt, people watch Days. Like, people demanded a second season of Days because they like the story. Like, don't even start saying that, like, oh, it's a rote concept and it's not original. Why would anyone read it? Get out of here.
Matt, you really gonna call me out on the show like this?
I mean, like, I just refuse to accept the fact that you don't know that's how the world works.
I guess. I don't know. I don't know. It didn't really feel like it was adding anything new to the shonen parody, I guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, Matt, I'm beyond the point of expecting Aoyama to teach me anything or do anything original.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah, I can stop going on and on about how beyond it all I am. I think that's a little uninteresting.
One thing I do want to talk about, though, just one final thing about Aoyama real quick.
Okay.
What was the point of, like, that 5-minute interlude at the beginning setting up Ozaki saving the cats that Mocha was taking care of?
Oh, I have no idea. I have no idea, because you know that's not going to come up again.
No, I know. Because I felt like the series was trying to establish Ozaki as being, like, he was going to actually be, like, this actual character in the series, because that was kind of a character-building moment where, he kind of shows his own philosophy of the world.
Yeah, and it was also preceded by this thing where these girls are all blushing because Ozaki is looking at them because they're so flattered because when he looks at something, he looks at it so intently, and it's like, ooh, Ozaki. But that never comes up again either, that he's, like, somehow a heartthrob or something. Because he's simultaneously this popular guy who girls think is cute, but also he never talks to anyone and everyone's surprised when he speaks and nobody knows who he is or what he's up to. So I don't know why he's both.
Yeah, because I feel like after we got past that part, the series just went in this completely other direction.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you're right. I kind of forgot about the whole first 5 minutes, which I guess proves your point. I'm gonna move on to the last show of the week in the smoothest transition possible by discussing Big Wind-Up episode 19.
Go for it.
So it starts in the bottom of the fifth, where Tosei is up to bat. Ultimately, they're able to get runners on first and third with only one out. Abe tries to induce a pop-up so that they can get a double play at home plate. He does manage to induce a pop-up by having Mahashi throw a fastball, but the bunt still lands on the ground. The runner on third is able to score, and now Nishira is only up 2-1. So ultimately, they're able to get out of the inning, only giving up one run, but they don't do anything for themselves in the top of the sixth. And in the bottom of the sixth, the Tosei batters are getting used to Mahashi's curveball, and so they start waiting on it, and they're able to get some solid hits. And by the time they have a runner in scoring position, a bunt is able to do the same thing again. They're able to score and even it up at 2 runs apiece. But Mahashi manages not to get discouraged, and he tells his teammates that they can still win it, and they're not behind yet.
Right. So, this episode was solid. I thought this was a decent character-building episode for Mahashi, though I'm realizing as I'm saying that's almost like every single episode up until now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not really... I mean, it's a good episode. Like, I like a lot of the interplay there. I like hearing more of the baseball strategy. But I'm not gonna lie, I'm getting a bit sick of Mihashi.
Yeah.
Not like I hate the character or anything like that, but I'm kind of feeling like at this point, it's like, I do kind of feel like it's somebody else's turn to shine.
Yeah, I want to hear someone else's voice other than Mahashi and Abe.
Yeah, kind of, like, it's great. I love the fact that Mihashi ends this episode as kind of being the spirit of the team, because, Mihashi is, of course, the one who would be the most likely to freak out at this turn of events.
Right.
But, And so, it's a great moment where, Mihashi is kind of starting to move past some of his prior nervousness. We get a lot more insight about that, about how Mihashi has always had this sort of extreme personality. Thanks to his cousin kind of talking about that with his mother.
Yeah.
It's just, I would kind of like to see some of the focus move away from Mihashi and start seeing some of the other players have some kind of big important moments.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think what I liked about it was just that Tosei is kind of getting his number. They're starting to sort of zero in on him and figure out what's working and what isn't. But, meanwhile, Nishiura is kind of exposing the fact that they're really not as physically prepared for this contest as Tosei is. So Tosei can sort of adapt in a way that Nishiura can't because they have more experience and skill. So, Nishiura could start off with a lead because they did their homework, but eventually Tosei's sort of catching up and figuring them out. So Nishiura is really going to have to sort of find some way to adapt. I like the fact that Tajima is really the only one who's able to do it because he's clearly gotten the Junta's number, and he managed to figure out his whole pitching style. He can read his pitches, he can read his pickoff moves. So every time Tajima gets up, he's able to get a single and then steal second automatically just because he's identified the pitcher, but he can't really explain it well enough for anyone else to do anything with that information. Can I take a brief aside and tell you my favorite line from the episode?
Please.
Okay, so it was at the very beginning when Mahashi is running back into the dugout, and he takes the cup off the cooler. I guess there's one cup there, whatever. He takes the cup off the cooler, and he fills it up, and he drinks all the water, and then he fills it up again, and he drinks it, and he says, "Boy, that's good stuff." And I don't know, there was something about me that I loved how goofy it was that we spent 15 seconds watching him drink water and then comment on how good water is. And I didn't totally know. I don't think it accomplished anything, but I love that it happened.
I mean, it kind of establishes the, it's kind of one of, those little minor moments during a game that you don't really, notice in other sports anime. They're not going out of their way to kind of showcase, the reality of every single moment of the game, which is something that Big Wind-Up generally does.
For better or for worse, you see every moment of the game.
One thing I will note about this episode, I did not get the gag about Mihashi always looking weirdly at the third baseman until this episode.
I told you about that 2 weeks ago.
You did?
Yeah, we talked about this on the podcast where I said, remember, it's like when they meditated, and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. And then you forgot again, clearly.
Okay, well, it's clearly in my mind now, okay? So I'm going to move on there.
Okay.
Actually, I didn't really have much else to say after that.
Yeah, that's fine. There wasn't a whole lot to write home about this one. The things that worked and were fun about the last few episodes work and are fun in this one.
Right. I kind of feel like you have to view this kind of game almost as its own sort of whole big episode.
Yeah.
Almost, because I think it almost, this entire, arc almost feels like it could just be a movie.
Yeah. I agree. I think by the time we get done with this Tosei game, we'll probably say we should have just watched it all in one sitting. Just taken 2 hours or 3 hours. I don't know how many episodes it'll be. But however long it is. And I think it might be the most fun to watch each game in sequence.
Right. Well, because, that's what we did when we originally watched it anyway. So, but...
Yeah.
It's good for us to kind of watch it week to week as well, to kind of understand, that's probably the best way to do it.
Yeah, and also it helps because I think if you do that, it's probably more fun in the moment, but it, a lot of stuff blends together.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, I think that's good for this week. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your conversation. Appreciate your thoughts. And I look forward to sharing them with you again next week.
Absolutely. See you next week.
Bye. Our logo design is by James Ratcliffe. The theme music is Fly High by Burnout Syndromes, covered and performed by Luke Bartka. You can follow KoshienCast on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and our email is koshiencast@gmail.com. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review. We'll be back next week with the best and worst from the world of sports anime, and until then, keep training.